Hello, everybody. Welcome to the advice stream. I'm your host, Jeremy International. I am joined here by recently always Oldmin. Hey, Oldmin, how's it going?
I'm feeling great. This is my first official episode as your official sidekick. So I've been looking forward to this moment for a very long time.
Who's to say what official even means? I don't know. Am I official? Are you official?
We're going to
I
get some friendship bracelets.
Okay, that'll make it official. I messed up my camera seconds before we went live. I hope I got it back. Okay. The advice stream is the live stream where we hang out. We do all kinds of stuff. Sometimes we play games. Sometimes we just hang out. Sometimes we have guests. And sometimes we don't. But the important thing is that we are here to answer your advice style questions if you have any. You should reach out. You can always go to JeremyInternational.com. There's a contact form at the bottom you can fill out, and we will read your questions out anonymously on the internet, and then we'll discuss as a community. Me and Oldman, as well as our special guests, will talk about them in just a second, and you, the audience at home. If you are new to the show, we are live on Twitch, we're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, we're live over at JeremyInternational.com. If you haven't come by and say hi previously, I don't know. I feel like now is probably a good time to do that. Our
Absolutely.
special guest to what happened? Something happened?
I just said absolutely.
Okay,
I
sorry.
can still hear you, buddy.
Okay, I was talking too much. I got to get used to having. I just want to say sidekick is your word. I haven't called you that myself. That's your descriptor for yourself. But
It's my greatest ambition.
um, I'm happy to have you. I'm happy to have you, Oldman. Thanks for agreeing to play along at home. Our special guest for today. Hey, everybody, saying hi in the chat. Hi, everybody. Our special guest for today
Hi, Eichel.
is hi, Eichel. Hey, Fred Undead. Kira Bagel's there. And by the way, if you're following along on any of the places I had previously mentioned, then you can throw a message into the chat. I am aggregating them from everywhere. I see all of the chats related to this particular stream. None of the chats that are unrelated to this stream, by the way. So we can say hi. But it seems like most of the action tends to be on Twitch, so that's probably what you'll be hearing the most of. Our special guest for this evening is an old and very dear friend of mine. They are a hobby artist and a technical writer / editor, and just an overall wonderful, kind, funny, smart. What are all the other wonderful things our friend is? But I'll go ahead and introduce them and bring them onto the show here. Our guest for tonight is Ease. And Ease is still muted. Wait, Ease, wait. Okay, now you're not muted. Hello.
Hello, how's it going?
Good.
Hi, E.
Hi.
It's working. The technology is working. I got 3 people at the same time. Never did that before. I need to have a graphic.
E and I are friends. E and I are friends as well, but we haven't spoken in quite a long time, so this is a real special treat for everybody.
Yeah, it used to be once upon a time we all lived kind of sort of close to each other, so I feel like we saw each other sometimes.
And now we kind of live
online, but
mostly online, yeah. And now we kind of like all live close. I think we all live in the same state now, which is cool.
Yeah, all in the same state.
But like, we're all old, so
That's true. The important thing is that we're old.
We're old as shit.
Yeah. And let me tell you, Ease, I appreciate you saying you're old. I'm quite a bit older than you. So,
I'm hitting 40 in a couple of months, so.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be 45 in, well, more than a couple months, but.
Oh my God, you're so close to getting your Hardee's discounted coffee.
Can I ask you your opinion, Ease, on this beard action that's going on Jeremy? Because I am a big fan.
Oh, I am a pro beard 100% of the time just 100% of the time. Plus there's it is uniform growth. I appreciate the salt and pepper situation that is happening.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. I love that.
Huge fan.
Can this show just be me having guests on that compliment me for 2 hours every Monday? 'Cause this is the time when I need the compliments.
You gave me some pretty nice compliments, so I gotta return
Thank
them in
you.
favor.
Yeah, I definitely my look for the fall I'm calling Shaggy Daddy is my fall look. I haven't had a haircut in a very long time, and I think I'm gonna wait quite a bit longer and grow my beard out for a little bit. I used to have I was a big fan of having a beard, but it's gotten so white that I don't want to do it anymore. But who am I
It's
kidding?
it's a solid
No,
look.
it looks good. It
Yeah.
looks good.
Oh.
Isn't Shaggy Daddy your old Tinder name from before you got married?
Yes, it was on everything, and that's not true. I also feel like Shaggy Daddy
Just made
sounds
it
like
up.
a really great like reggae singer. I think like a reggae
Yeah.
Shaggy Daddy. Okay, so anyways, today is also the first in a series. We're gonna do this every Monday in October, where we discuss a scary movie. And question. Oh wait, hang on. We're falling a little behind on the chat. Let's catch up on the chat real quick. Okay. So on Twitch, Eichel's here. Hi, Eichel, and Fred Undead is here. Eichel says Oldman sounds mighty audible today. That's good. Yeah, we had a little bit of an audio issue with Oldman's mic last week. It seems like that's been resolved. Eichel also says that they've never been 40 before. You know, no one under 40 has ever been 40, but everyone over 40 has. Huh? That was pretty good. That was pretty deep. And then Fred Undead is here. Fred Undead says that they feel like they're in a Zoom meeting. Yeah. Although shockingly, we're not using Zoom at all for this. There's no Zoom involved in this production whatsoever. But it does. I'm sorry for people like myself that spend all day in a variety of Zoom meetings. That your entertainment for Monday night is another Zoom meeting. And yeah, Fred and Dad said, even my mom complimented Jeremy's looks. That implies that your mom doesn't like me, Fred and Dad. Like, even she complimented it. And Fred and Dad's mom has been on the show before and I think is a big fan. And
is a lovely human being. Hello, Paula. I would die for you.
Right. And I wish she would compliment my looks, but that has not happened yet.
So E's a little bit of a background. There's been an ongoing inside joke for the last couple of weeks where Oldman wants to ask Freddie's mom out on a date. And
I do. I get it.
And,
joke.
Yeah. So anyways, I was just bringing you up to speed on that weird little tidbit of the advice stream trivia that's going on.
I think you could have saved time by describing the people that don't want to date Fred Undead's.
That's true. There's not many of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I don't because I'm married to Fred Undead, and that would make things complicated. So, anywho,
that's an advice
oh my
question.
God, Fred Undead said, "My mom is going to say no to all of you."
No, she's better than all of us. She deserves better.
All right, let's move away from awkward conversations about my mother-in-law, please. And so today, this week's episode of the Advice Stream is the first in a series where every Monday in October we're going to be discussing a horror movie, just to be transparent, of my choosing. Horror movies that I either I've seen and I really like, and I think are great and scary and spooky in all the right ways, or a movie that I always wanted to see and needed a reason to see it. And so I decided to make a show about it. Ease, would you like to talk to us about our movie selection for this evening?
All right. So the spooky movie of this week is a kind of I don't know how to describe it. It's a fake documentary. It aired decades ago on the BBC.
1992, by the way.
1992, which I hate that's 41 years ago. And it aired during the 9 o'clock slot that BBC had kind of cordoned off for their kind of anthology film series. Kind of the closest thing we can think of now is Black Mirror, where it's like every week they have a different movie length show. And this one was called Ghostwatch, just one word if you want to Google it. So with Ghostwatch, they thought they were like It's a good way to describe it.
They thought
Once
they
you watch
weren't
this movie,
being
you're
dumb.
yeah. Once you watch this movie, you'll understand. It's on the Internet Archive, by the way. It got a re-release for its 30th anniversary last year on Blu-ray. Highly recommend picking it up or just watching it on the Internet Archive. Honestly, either one would be fine. But what was I going to say? So they thought they were getting away with everyone being like, "Oh, it's after 9 o'clock. It's in the like I think it was called Screen One, which is the name of the show. This slot where they would have these anthology films, and the problem was is that they kind of accidentally did a War of the Worlds situation, but with demonic possession. So they had all of their most popular newscasters set up to do this fake documentary where they were going to be investigating a house that was possessed by a demon and was haunting a single mother and her two preteen girls. And they go through this and they start like things start normally and it's this kind of like bombastic like they've got the guy out on the mic with interviewing all the people out on the street and big hubbub. It kind of looks like what you would expect to see like outside of like Good Morning America or something, but outside of just like a normal British row house. So they things start kind of happening and you start seeing things in the background as things go on. And what the BBC did to kind of send all of this is they actually used a lot of technology that was really novel at the time and is now used in a lot of ghost hunting television shows. But at that time, like nobody had seen any of this stuff, like the thermal infrared imaging, all that good stuff. So this plays out. I can't remember the exact length of it. I think it was an hour, maybe hour and a half. But things get really weird, and there starts being like possession of these extremely well-known, like think like Katie Couric and Dan Rather. Like, if you can just think of like the name of a newscaster and a picture of Barbara Walters, that sort of like journalistic reputation. They have these people like getting possessed on what looks like live television. And the BBC was quickly inundated with, God, I can't remember the exact number, but it was something kind of ridiculous. I don't want to overshoot it. It may have been like 600,000 phone calls. I may be adding an extra zero or something to that, but about people like scared that they were getting possessed through their television screen.
But that's also, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's kind of
Yeah.
the premise, is
Yeah,
that the possession is spreading through the program. And
exactly.
and so they were telling people in a very serious way that this was happening.
By trusted people, they were using all their real names, all the
Yeah.
normal like news graphics, the whole nine yards. So these people, if they,
I just watched it. Oh, I'm sorry, E, but I was just going to say I literally just finished it a few minutes ago, and I think the term they used was a mass
yes.
seance.
And I have to say, like, describing it sounds super cheesy, but it is one of the more chilling horror movies I've ever seen. And the very last, I would say, 30 seconds of it is one of the most memorable scenes in any horror movie that I can think of. Like, it's definitely a top 10. I'm not going to spoil it, but just when you see the last 30 seconds and everything goes black, think of me. So.
Yeah, this movie. So, Ease, you got me into this movie. I had never heard of it before, and it's a movie that's really stuck with me. And you're right; those last 30 seconds are so creepy, but there's so many other parts of the movie too that just stick with you. And I like horror movies. I watch like lots of scary movies. I like to be scared, but I hadn't felt this kind of like lingering sense of like what's behind me, or like even kind of like scared to turn off the light since I was a little kid. And this movie absolutely made me feel that way. And I think part of it, the end is really in your face and really terrifying, but then it's such a slow build to that. It's so unsettling. Is
Yeah.
what really makes this movie stick with me. What did you think, Oldman?
Well, let me say this. I found it very scary. I watched it today during the day. And so perhaps that had some, impact on the level of scariness. Had I watched it after the sun went down, I might have had a very different experience. But I also watched the Comedy Central roast of Donald Trump the other day, and that was pretty scary too. So I'm not sure how to compare those two things.
Just different types of scary.
Different types of scary.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And I'm one of those people, Oldman, and I did I aggressively talked up this movie when we did the show last week. When someone tells me something's really scary, that kind of makes me be a little more resistant to being scared, I guess, when I watch it. But for those folks, by the way, catching up on the chat here on Twitch, Dumpster Acid. Hey, Dumpster Acid, first time chat. Welcome to the stream, Dumpster Acid. Well, that's hard to say. Said, it's so cool. Wish they did another one. And Fred Undead follows that up with Ghostwatch 2 with Matt Berry. Yeah, that'd be pretty great. I would, I'd wait in line to see anything that Matt Berry's in. Laszlo's the thing in the background. So, as an example of one of the ways that this movie kind of builds on the creepiness in a subtle way is they've got like a surveillance camera in the little girl's room, and they show a scene. Not much happens in it. They go back to the studio, and then they've created this fake number that in the real world, I guess people could actually call. And if this wasn't clear from Ease's description before, they present this as being a live program. It wasn't. It was previously recorded. So they're pretending like people are calling this number and getting someone in the studio.
Yeah, and that's a really important part of the presentation is they also had kind of like the old telethon style thing where they would have like the row of people like answering the telephones, waiting to pick up your call. And yeah, they would flash this number on the screen throughout the thing, and they would occasionally have callers, but quote unquote callers, their audio piped in, like, which starts building on the narrative of this being a mass televised seance with the spirit traveling through the electrical connections.
Yeah.
So, it sounds so cheesy. Like I cannot do this movie justice.
No, you really.
No, you have to see it.
Yeah, and I'll get the link if it's on the Internet Archive. I'll get that link from Ease, and I'll post it in the blog at JeremyInternational.com if anyone's looking for a link to it after the show. But this one shot where they show the like surveillance camera in the little girl's bedroom and nothing happens, and it cuts back to the studio and they talk for a little bit longer. Nothing really particular unusual is happening. And then they have one of these fake stage callers come in, and the caller said, "Can you put the footage of the little girl's room back on TV? Because I saw a man in the corner." And they go back and they cut to the footage, and this time it's, absolutely different footage where there's clearly a shape of a man in the corner of their room. And it wasn't, I went back and watched this 1,000 times. It is not there the first time they showed it, but this is how they start to like manipulate your perception. And it's so uneasy, and there's so many things like that where like you're not sure if you saw it or not, and someone says that they saw something and then they go back, or if you're not watching carefully, or like the scene where the cameraman pans across a window just briefly, and just in the second that, I'm ruining it for everybody, I'm sorry, but in the second that he goes across the window, you can see in the reflection that there's someone standing next to him that wasn't there before. And I would love to know how they shot that. It must have been like a very choreographed, where there was a guy behind a counter that ran up and stood next to him just in time for the camera to go and then ran away again. I don't know. But man, it's so creepy. And just talking about it, I didn't get a chance to watch most of it today again, but I saw it not too long ago. And it still creeped me out. Just talking about it now, I got shivers up and down my spine.
I did too. And honestly, I will tell you, if you can see kind of like what my background is like, this is like the optimal viewing, like pitch black outside with all your windows open.
Yeah.
I'm not
Lots of
exaggerating.
reflections.
Lots of reflections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another movie.
Warned me last night that I should watch it during the day, so that's what I
Yeah,
ended up doing.
maybe I ruined it for you by telling you to do that. The
No,
way that
not at all. It was good.
the way this movie made me feel was a lot like when the original Blair Witch Project came out, because that was a movie that, you know, I was probably the primary demographic. I must have been in high school when that movie came out. And the way that they marketed it is that if you didn't really understand a lot about how the world really worked, that you weren't sure when you went into the movie if it was real or not. They did a
But
really good.
this was before like social media and everything. So
Yeah.
I remember like there was that question of like, okay, is part of this found footage, is it found footage, that sort of thing. And did I sob crying at the very last scene in the movie theater? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
So
You know, I
That
think
was
now.
what I was going to say. I'm sorry, Jeremy.
No,
but,
you go ahead, Oldman. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I was going to say that it's like Orson Welles' Mass Panic meets Blair Witch Project.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very much what it is. On that note, one of the ways that both Orson Welles and the people in the BBC that made this could have avoided the confusion is to take a break every once in a while and talk about the show that they were doing. So let's do that now. If you're joining us in late here, this is the Advice Stream. I'm your host, Jeremy International. As always, I am joined by Oldman, and our special guest for the week is Ease. We got some advice questions coming in. We're gonna get to those in just a second. But so far, we've been talking about the 1992 horror movie called Ghostwatch that Ease got me into, I guess, like a year or so ago, and it still creeps me out even talking about it. If you like horror movies, if you like to feel a little uneasy that maybe someone's standing behind you when they're not, then you should check this out. It's not always easy to see. It's not going to be on any of your streaming services, but there'll be a link in the blog at JeremyInternational.com shortly after this program is over, where you can go check it out. If you would like, by the way, to seek advice from the three of us, because we work as a team here on the Advice Stream, head on over to JeremyInternational.com. There's a contact form at the bottom. You can send anonymous questions that way. If you don't want to be anonymous and just shoot it into the chat, you can do that too. But if you like to keep things anonymous, JeremyInternational.com, spelled just like you think it is. And scroll down to the very bottom, and there's a contact form there. Shall we do an advice question that's come in, friends? Shall we?
We shall.
We shall.
All right, I got a few. Let's pick one that's not too long, that's not too complicated. Okay, here we go. I am a vegan for a variety of reasons. I don't preach and often find it easier to bring my own food rather than pick at my host for what goes into a meal. My boyfriend was invited to a family summer gathering. It was very isolated and rural. I explained I was bringing my own food. His father and brother made special vegan jokes to me before, of course. What happened was the kids raided my food. It was in my pack when the pantry snacks got locked up. I've brought enough food for me for 5 days. They went through everything in 5 hours. I got upset, and it was just a big joke to everyone. Then it seemed to become a game. If I set aside some peanut butter and celery, someone would eat it. Some of the oranges I put aside for breakfast. I got offered cereal and milk instead. I tried to get my boyfriend to drive me to a grocery store, and he told me it would take more than 2 hours one way and to lighten up. By the time I left, I wanted to cry. My boyfriend and I had been fighting about it. He tells me I was overreacting, and it wasn't like I'd starve out there. Is he right? We've been together for 9 months and talking about moving in together. I have my doubts.
You should have more than doubts. You should have an exit strategy.
Yeah, I know.
Absolutely.
Doubt implies you could go either way here. You know, I mean, this one, as far as questions we get, is pretty straightforward. It's, you know, I mean, the things that bother me about this is, first off, the person writing in has to start by saying, that they're vegan for reasons. The only reason you need to be vegan is because you want to be vegan. You don't need to give anybody a reason if you don't want to. And then they also have to say that they don't preach about it. Like this stereotype of like vegans badgering. I'm not a vegan. I've been a vegetarian on and off throughout my life. I'm not currently. But this, kind of expectation that vegans are gonna get in everyone's face about being a vegan is ridiculous. And it's sad that after this ordeal, this person feels like they still have to like justify themselves.
I will say a lot of this, yes, the boyfriend in question sucks. However, I think this person could really benefit from doing some work on their self esteem
Yeah.
to figure out what they think is important, understand their own self worth. And just as Jeremy said, the only reason you need to be vegan is because you feel like you have a reason to be vegan. No one else needs to know that. You can share it with them if you trust them. You don't always have to explain yourself. And yeah, take some time for yourself outside of this awful, awful relationship and learn to love your beautiful vegan self.
Yes. You want to add something in, Oldman? This one's pretty easy.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I want to say is that in general, I hear a lot more annoying stuff from people who are anti-vegan than I do annoying stuff from people that are vegan.
That's
Like
it right
the
there.
whole bacon, I'll eat 2 bacons for every animal you don't eat or whatever. Like that is something that I see all the time. I see the stereotype about vegans set up all the time. And I'm not a vegan, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of that reactivity is because vegans have a point.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of the pushback people give vegan culture in general is because they think about it and they're like, yeah, we should give these animals a break.
Even
I
if
agree
they
with
don't
that.
admit it to themselves.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I often find myself in that kind of dilemma, um, as well.
Yeah, and Fred Undead just put in the chat that mocking your lifestyle can be a type of abuse. And also, I will say this, if your boyfriend is not supportive of your lifestyle and is not willing to stand up to his family and tell them to buzz off, you're in for a world of hurt. So don't sign that lease. Don't move in with one another.
Yeah, please don't if you are a hetero couple and you're not using some kind of birth control, please start right now because don't have a kid with this guy because then you're stuck with him and he seems like he's a real piece. Uh, I One of the other things that comes up a lot on this show is me encouraging people to really think hard about who they risk getting pregnant with, because once you have a kid with somebody, you're stuck, and it's getting harder and harder to get an abortion these days. Kira Bagel says there's no way he wasn't in on the bullying. Yeah, I mean, being in a relationship when you're moving in together, 9 months isn't a super long time, but it's not a short amount of time either. And moving in together, that's a very strong type of connection between two people. You're living together, and I don't think it's fair to say like take his family's side or take your side. The point of being in a relationship is that there aren't sides. And if his family decides to bully you, then they're in the wrong too. They're betraying themselves by being cruel to someone that they're supposed to care about.
And even
And
if he wasn't actively in on the bullying, staying silent in it means he was complicit. So
absolutely, yeah,
100%.
absolutely, yeah. This is one of those times where he's told you who he is, and this is your opportunity to listen. And I think you need to make it very clear to him why you are no longer interested in being.
and I'm going to say this is probably not the first time that he's told you who he is.
Oh, I'm sure. People don't usually become. I'm always on the fence about whether to swear or not in this show, but I'm going to do
already
it
did
in this
it.
case. Yeah, people that are pieces of shit just don't become, unless they had like some kind of brain injury or something, they don't become pieces of shit overnight. A piece of shit's always a piece of shit. It's just you got in a situation where the consequences of his shittiness were very hard for you to cover up. And I don't think it's always great to tell someone to just break up, but break up, get away.
And do some work on
when
yourself.
When people come to, not necessarily this stream, but when they come to, for example, a relationship advice subreddit, or they come to another public forum to air their difficulties, at that point, a lot of people think that those forums are too ready to say break up. But by the time that you're there talking about it to random people on the internet, I feel like it sorts itself in the way that, the reason that so many of those subreddits, apart from being very, easy to say that you should break it off, is that it self-selects.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also, you can always just break up with anybody for any reason. It literally doesn't. You can decide you just wake up one morning and you don't like the way that they drink their coffee. That's literally a legit reason to break up.
It's not a very nice one, but it is legit.
It don't matter. It's nice.
So that's a good question. That's a good debate topic there, Ease. Do you think there's ever a time where ending a relationship with someone you owe them a reason, an explanation?
I think you should give them a reason and an explanation, because that's the kind thing to do. I think that you should, when doing so, focus on the way that you are feeling in that situation, not the way that they are, not on the things that they're doing. So let's say, yeah, you just don't like the way they drink coffee anymore. You can say, I'm having a lot of struggles right now with, I don't know, sensory overload, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I need some time to myself, blah, blah, blah. Like, if it's something that is harmless, like the way that somebody drinks coffee, like, okay, yeah, it's not the best reason, but it can be your reason. However, if it's a bad situation where this kind of asshole boyfriend sounds like he's just kind of in with the family bullying, and it's going to be endemic to your relationship, then yeah, you can say, I didn't appreciate the way that you did that, and I deserve better.
Yeah.
Because that's the kindest thing to say to him too, because maybe no one has ever said that to him before and stood up to him and said, hey, this is really mean and it makes people feel really rotten, and maybe losing you is what he needs to realize, like, hey, I need to do some work on myself.
Kira Bagel in the chat says, I think we've read a few of those. Some people don't show their true colors, true selves until later in the relationship, so then you feel trapped by the invested time. Fred Undead agrees that it's the sunk cost fallacy. I agree with that. Kira Bagel says, I can change them is another problem people tend to have.
Yeah, that sunk cost fallacy will definitely get you. That got me. I ended up getting a divorce, and you know what? I should have just left years prior.
Yeah.
Ditto.
I'm sorry that I'm smiling when I said that. I just realized that both of the people, I'm the only one here that hasn't been divorced. I'm outnumbered. Statistically, I guess that's how it works.
I feel like everyone should get a freebie marriage.
I agree with that. Well, I mean, speaking of that, your coffee comment makes me nervous, because I know for a fact that Fred Undead, who I'm married to, hates the way that I drink coffee in the morning. So now I'm worried that I'm on thinner ice than I thought I was.
I would say the coffee thing came up to me because I had originally brought a can of this was a newbie mistake, sparkling water to a recording, which is not the quietest thing to sip on during a audio thing. So I promise you that Fred has not been texting me every morning telling me how much she hates you drink coffee.
Okay, thank you. If you're curious, we have a really nice espresso machine, and it makes really, really good coffee. And in the morning I do a double shot. I don't put anything in it. I let it sit out for about 20 minutes until it's room temperature, and I just gulp it down in 2 big gulps. And I think it's disrespectful to the coffee. But that's how I don't like hot beverages. I got a thing for hot beverages. I don't like them.
My
and still
spouse
tastes
does
good.
the exact same way, the exact same thing, but with a 20-ounce cup of coffee.
Yeah, I
Just
mean,
full on
this
chugs it. I'm
probably
not
has the
exaggerating.
same amount of caffeine that the 20-ounce coffee has.
Yep.
And also Fred and Deb was kind enough to point out that she also hates how I eat grapefruit. So
I mean, yeah, I was gonna. Oh
divorce
wait,
me on
she
that.
said besides that he eats grapefruit. That's right. I was gonna say, like, is it just the fact that it's grapefruit? Because Fred and Did famously hates grapefruit.
Yeah, no, it's also the how I eat it that I think she hates that
How do you
more.
eat it?
Like an
Yeah.
orange, I just peel it and do the sections and eat it that way.
So you eat the
So
the like membrane on the outside
No,
of
so I
the.
peel that part off. I'm sorry. I peel the big thick peel on the outside off. I split it into sections, and then I also peel off like the membrane part because that's not good to eat either. And then I just eat the juicy bits on the inside.
I'm going to agree with Fred and Dead in the chat where she says like a serial killer. So
I feel like that's the most natural way to eat a citrus fruit in general.
Yeah.
But I've definitely also been the person that uses the special spoon and adds
yes,
sugar to it. Yeah.
that's the way to go. Or honey, a nice little drizzle of honey is really nice.
Ooh,
But yeah,
yeah.
like I have one special little serrated grapefruit spoon that exists for me to
Mhm.
feel fancy. Like the one time a year I eat a grapefruit, and you know what? That was a really good $4 investment on my part.
Yeah, see, I like to get in. I want to feel like I'm like I don't know, working for it. It's like eating crabs, like eating blue crabs.
We
Like you
need to
have to pay.
discuss
Yeah,
you
I
trying to
can
open
see
a
that.
coconut now too.
I haven't had a whole coconut in a long time, but the way I used to do that was to put holes, get a hammer and a screwdriver, and then wrap it in a towel and knock it on the sidewalk until it breaks into pieces.
Jeremy learned how to eat
That's a
from
lot of
Looney
work.
Tunes cartoons.
Yeah, I did. I don't think. I'm sure there's a better way to eat a coconut, but the idea of smashing it on the sidewalk until it breaks into pieces is kind of fun. It's cathartic.
Were you doing this like when you lived in the steakhouse basement?
I'm sure I did it at least once or twice.
Okay.
That was a
Which, by
long
the way,
time ago.
have you talked about the steakhouse basement on?
I have not mentioned.
I don't
it.
know if it hasn't been described as a steakhouse basement. Was this before my time, Remy?
No, I
No,
think you were there. I think we hung
yeah,
out on it.
you've been in that apartment before, Oldman. This is the old basement apartment I lived on H Street Northeast.
Okay.
So I think when
I
we
know what you're
first
talking
became
about.
friends, you and I, is when I lived there.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
we
it
called it.
had
I called it the steakhouse basement because it had this like pendant lamp like in the bay window area,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like that orange stained glass
yeah, it was
with
like
like
wrought
the wrought
iron and
iron.
stained glass. There's lots of
That sounds
exposed brick
familiar.
and like mahogany and like maroon carpets.
And I feel like the
Mm-hmm. Oh, I
carpet at
remember
one
that
point
place. Yeah,
was
for
a
sure.
shag carpet, maybe about 30 years ago.
Yeah,
And it had been flooded and trampled down and whatever a number of times, but had a lot of good times in that basement.
yeah, it was
It
a
was
fun
it was
place.
a great place.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Definitely looked like a 70s steakhouse though.
Yes, it did. Um, so while we're waiting, let's give the audience a little bit more time to write in some more questions if you have some. I have a few that we'll get to in a minute, but let's go back. Let's go back to Ghostwatch a little bit. Um, I think it's cool to think about this as the BBC's version of War of the Worlds. Because I think it's similar, at least the story from the radio show, the War of the Worlds radio show that we hear is that so many people thought it was real. I read somewhere that that's kind of an exaggeration. It wasn't really. But besides the fact that's what everyone thinks of when they think of that, and that's certainly what everyone thinks of when people think of this movie, is the same way. Do you think something like that could happen today, where like a deliberately fictional, for entertainment purposes, not political purposes, piece of media could come out that people conflate with being real while they're experiencing it. We certainly know that deliberately fictional um, content for political purposes, this is half of our politics in this country is just that now.
As someone that watches pro wrestling several times a week and watches actual grown adults getting upset about obvious stories, I'm going to say yes.
Okay. So you think that pro wrestling is doing something similar where it's a piece of fiction, but it's presented in a way that people aren't sure, and then some people decide on leaning towards it being real.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about the sportsmanship or the athleticism. I'm talking about the absolutely, most of the times, horrid storylines that they have going on in the
Like the
background
beefs.
where, yeah, just the beefs and like who's mad at one another and whatever scandal and who's doing a heel turn or whatever. And there are legitimate thousands and thousands of people online getting actually upset about what they see as betrayals and backstabbings and all of this stuff when it is extremely clear that it is all fake.
And
I feel like the first thing that came to mind. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
We got to work on the repartee here a little bit. I'm sorry. There's a delay. I was just going to say that the first thing that comes to mind for me is ARGs, alternate reality games. And I think that might be the modern manifestation of that type of thing, because people take ARGs very seriously. And at least when they first started being produced, there was always this, tension between, is this a real thing? Is it not a real thing? I feel like they try to replicate that today, and it's not quite as successful as it used to be. But yeah, if you're going to do an alternate reality game that involves like phone calls and hunts and cryptographic puzzles that you have to solve, that has some resonance with the idea that, oh, is this real or is this fake?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I guess the interesting thing, a couple points about that. First off is the people that, Orson Welles, when he did War of the Worlds, and the people that did Ghostwatch they didn't imagine people, right? They didn't think anyone was going to think it was real. They just thought they were making a piece of entertainment, and they forgot to remind people that it was fiction, and people tuning in saw something that was really presented as if it was real and assumed that it was. So I think that's a unique thing that I'm not sure could necessarily happen anymore. To follow up with your question before, Ease, do you think the people that are getting upset about like the story and like the beefs between the wrestlers or whatever, do you think that they're playing along too? Do you think that they really are upset, or they're like, part of the story is that we're upset, like we're supposed to be emotionally invested as if it was real, so we're like participating with the fiction? Or do you think they really think it? Like as an example, you go to a haunted house, you understand no one in the haunted house is trying to kill you, but you play along as part of the fun, and you actually get scared because you went there to become scared.
Yeah, so and I'm one of the people that I like the storylines because they're cheesy, and I like the fake backstabbing, and I'm going to be the first person in like the chat with my friends to be like, no, if something bad happens. But like there are people out there that genuinely take this way too seriously, and that's just like one thing. Yeah, there's going to be the people that are watching the ghost hunting shows and are like, yeah, this is extremely real. Like Zach Baggins, like he's a scientist, and he definitely like, yeah, those Janko pants are holding the secrets of the universe. So
yeah. And it's like this weird echo chamber where like the people making it know that it's fake, and I think that part of them must know that some of their audience is going to think that it's real. And then the people that think that it's real kind of like blow it up, and they get more invested. So then the people that are making it that know that it's fake invest more in it. And it kind of goes back and forth. The idea of like collaborating when you make when you make content or art or whatever we want to call it in 2023, and you're doing this weird collaboration with your audience. Like, I get that when you're doing something live, but it happens when you're doing something that's recorded or streamed or whatever too, because the audience gives, participates in the creation of the story, even in weird, unexpected ways. I don't know. I think that's kind of cool, and that's one of the things. I think when Ghostwatch was on TV, I think I remember people freaked out and someone might have like killed themselves. I think, and that's upsetting and disturbing in a million ways. But I think.
Wait, did that really happen with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Somebody killed themselves?
Yeah, it was a guy who was he already had some mental health issues.
He was already very sick, but this is the thing that pushed him over.
Uh-huh.
And he
awful.
It pushed him over because I think his family had some like issues with their house. And I will say this, like for anyone who's not seen it, a lot of the haunting focuses on the banging on pipes in a house. And I think the guy who committed suicide, his family had like similar like plumbing problems or something. So
the ghost's name is Pipes.
It is Pipes, and it is. I will also point this out. It is so scary that Jeremy and Fred Undead and I had to actually just start calling the ghost Peepes, and that's not what we call it, just to like make ourselves feel better.
Yeah, I think I only got to sleep that night by making the Peepes joke.
The Peepes joke. But yeah, the guy and then his family came back and was like. It makes me think there may have been like a lot more happening to that story than was let on, because I think the family also came back and were like, yeah, we were bewitched through the television and all this other stuff. And it was like,
So they really bought into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, BBC didn't like ever show this again. Like they got like big trouble for this.
Another thing that just randomly comes to mind right now, wasn't there another BBC thing that people took too seriously about spaghetti trees at some point? Like, they were talking about how they made a report on how that there's these trees where the spaghetti is grown from.
I think it was like an April Fool's thing. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's right.
Well,
it was an April Fool's thing, and people took it far too seriously.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's it. Yeah, like even it doesn't have to be scary or something. It can just be like, honestly, like now that we're talking about it, I'm wondering if it is even, in a way, it could be more likely to happen because of social media, where if something's unannounced and they don't do enough to couch it in notifications of it being fiction, that people are going to get onto social media on platforms where they're going to have these instant messaging or, instant microblogging, whatever, and start talking about it in real time and being like, oh my God, what the fuck? And then it's going to start kind of snowballing on itself. And because once it starts happening, people stop taking that moment to say, is this real? They just get kind of wrapped up in the group excitement of it.
Well,
that's a really interesting point, Yves.
I'm basing that off of conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, if we broaden this question into something a little bit more than just like fiction projects, if we start talking about misinformation or disinformation online, isn't QAnon kind of like its own Blair Witch Project type thing?
Yep.
In a certain sense.
And that's a perfect example of something that, from my understanding at least of QAnon, and I'm not going to say it's extensive, but it seems like it started off as like a entertainment focus project. And then so many people decided that they wanted it to be real. And then the creators or managers or whatever of that project decided to double down on it, and it just was like this echo chamber that just got more and more intense and got more and more people to buy into it. I mean, I guess there's a lot of things like that, and that goes back to something that I feel like I've said a lot about about politics in America right now is that people know what lying is. Lying isn't new. People didn't invent lying for the internet. That people choose to believe in outlandish things because it excuses some behavior they already wanted to do, and they just need a reason to justify it, and it doesn't need to be a sensical or a practical or even a realistic reason. They just need a reason. And so people buy into these nonsensical conspiracy theories. I think an awful lot of them know deep down inside that they're not real, but it excuses something, usually harming someone, that they already wanted to do.
Doesn't this go back to the advice question of the meat eaters knowing that like maybe eating animals isn't great, but they've
Yeah.
got to double down on making fun of vegetarians because if they don't, they've got to examine something inside of themselves that makes themselves uncomfortable.
Consciousness.
And that's
is
why it makes them
complicated.
uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, you want to do another question?
Please.
Yes. I'm gonna take a quick little boys break in the bathroom, but I'm hearing what you're saying while I'm doing that.
Okay.
I'll be right back. I'm sorry.
Make sure that you. I don't want to hear you going to the bathroom, so make sure you, whatever you got to do for that. And by the way, before you go, Oldman, I would like at some point for everyone to share what their favorite horror movie, if you have one, is, and that includes people in the chat and you two also, because I'm looking for ideas for other movies to do this week. But let's go ahead and do a question, and we'll get to that shortly. Okay, here's one. Okay. I don't like that one so much.
Sorry, your problem sucks.
I know. Or like, I don't know. It's just your problem's so bad that everyone knows there's no question about what we're supposed to do to deal with it. And let me check. I haven't checked in a few minutes to see if any new ones are coming in through the website. They have not yet. Cool. I did get an email that I got to start paying back my student loans. I'm not excited about that. Okay, here's another one. I think this is good. This will bring up some interesting conversations. So basically, I am absolutely terrified of being in public, and even people in general. What's that noise? Does anyone else hear that?
It sounded like a movie or something.
It sounds
Yeah,
like
it sounds like somebody's playing with a fidget spinner.
Oh, this one? Yeah, sorry.
That's fine.
I'm very. I love that you knew exactly what it was. Sorry.
I just
That was
switched
creepy.
over to my audio tab, and I could see that it was coming from Ease, and I'm like, what is Ease doing? Okay. Back to the question. So basically, I'm absolutely terrified of being in public, and even people in general. I really hate being in public alone or just in general. I sometimes feel genuinely sick if I'm in public because of how nervous I am. When I'm with my mom, I can just about manage, but on my own, it's really difficult. I don't want to have to constantly be with my mom as I'm 17 now, and it feels a bit silly. Plus, I just feel bad dragging my mom out with me all the time if I have to go out somewhere, so I don't end up breaking down. It started to affect my life pretty significantly. I can barely go outside anymore, which isn't good since I'm supposed to be attending college right now. But it also has really affected my social life as I can't really talk to anyone. I have tried, but I tend to just stay silent and have trouble actually communicating. I just can't physically talk to people or be in public without being afraid of something, whether it's because I feel I'm going to be judged or because of some other random reason. I think this is beyond the point of just being an introvert. I can't actually tell if I have a valid problem though, or if I'm just being dramatic. Should I try to get help for this, or should I, or if I should, what's the best way to go about it, as I don't actually know what helps with things like this?
Aw.
Yeah,
I think before we discuss just like if it is affecting the quality of your life, it is a valid problem.
Yeah, that's how you know that it's a problem, is if you can't get through. You know, the analogy we always use is if you're in the ocean and a part of the ocean where you know that there can be sharks sometimes and you're scared of getting bitten by a shark, then that's normal and healthy and you should keep your wits about you. But if you're sitting on your sofa watching TV and you're scared of getting bitten by a shark, then something's gone wrong and you need to talk to a doctor or a specialist or get treatment in some way. And this is definitely one of those you're sitting on your sofa situations. This is, normal isn't a real world, but I'll say this isn't sustainable. This isn't a sustainable lifestyle to have. Even for a young person, 17, you're just getting started in life. And it should be something that can be resolved, although it might not be easy through some form of combination of medication and therapy, I'd imagine. I'm not a doctor. None of us here are doctors. But this one is sad just because this person feels like they're just on the first step to what might be a challenging road ahead of them.
And I will just say this from my own personal experience, just because I know, like, for me, it helps if somebody tells me that they have gone through the same thing before. Um, the last 3, coming up on 4 years has been pretty traumatic. And the message for a long time was don't go outside or you will die. And or you may kill other people. And that's a pretty traumatic message to be given to you from all positions of authority, especially if you're a caring person, and especially during what are still formative years for you. You said you were 17, so you've been doing this since your early teenage years. And as someone who is now 39, I still find myself fighting against some agoraphobia, like going outside. I definitely don't go outside as much as I used to, go out and do things as much as I used to. A lot of my favorite things involved being in crowds, and I still feel anxious about that. But with that being said, I was coming at it from pretty robust support, therapy, medication, the whole 9 yards, both which I found extremely helpful. And as somebody in the chat, I think it was Kira Bagel, or no, hold on, Amagara Enigma says that a lot of colleges do have mental health services on campus, and I used those when I was in college, when I was in graduate school.
Me too, extensively, yeah.
Yeah, they're sometimes they're just a Band-Aid, and sometimes what they are there for is just to point you in the right direction. But that is definitely something to look into, and I can promise you, if you go to your campus health services for this, you are not the only person with this problem.
Yeah. So. If you're
I feel like
I was just going to follow up on that. If you're in college, that's a really great resource for college students, even if it's just to like start the process of seeing where you're supposed to go next. If you're not in college, you're 17, you could probably still be on your parents' health insurance, and they might be able to get you somebody too. Go ahead, Oldman. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I remember when I was like not exactly 17, 18, 19, 20. I remember that I had to like really look closely at the people that I was around in order to actually learn what social cues were. And I had a lot of social anxiety back then because I felt like, wow, I really don't know how to do this. And I don't know how severe this person's social anxiety is, but I can relate to that feeling of, being feeling like you're not there at the same level as some of the other people your age.
Yeah.
And it's possible, because this person is so young, that they might be able to take that road, like consider it in a more like intellectual way as a possible, not solution, but something that could help with that level of social anxiety. I hear Kat.
That is Nixie. It is currently sock o'clock. She brings a single sock or item out from our bedroom, drags it to the front of the house during the evening, and yowls the whole way, and then presents it to us. Because one time we gave her a treat for doing it.
Good memory.
Here's the sock.
That's
She's gonna get a treat for doing it.
Kira Bagel says, I'm genetically predisposed to anxiety and recently had a bad interaction with medication. What my mom suggested was to go and talk to my doctor and look into anti-anxiety medication. You know, as a person that since I was about the letter writer's age has dealt with lots of medical problems and had lots of doctors, talking to a doctor is a skill that you have to learn how to do, and it takes time, and you need to find the right doctor for you to be able to communicate with them if you can. But I think that's one of those things that people don't talk about, is communicating what you need from a doctor is not something that anyone just knows how to do. You have to learn how to do it. And if you have, issues that require a bit of help, whatever those issues are, that's something that you need help learning. And, hopefully, the person that wrote in, if they have a difficult time being able to communicate that you mentioned that your mom goes out with you all the time, that maybe your mom can help you. I mean, she certainly has more experience probably. But that's a hard thing sometimes to learn how to do, especially when you're already struggling with something. Kira Bagel goes on to say, another thing that might help with getting a hold of the situation is going to locations in a less populated time, especially for shopping. There's lots of grocery stores that are open 24 hours a day. And that's good advice. It's just kind of a way to ease yourself in.
Yeah, and something else that I hear a lot of people be surprised by this, like medication and therapy, if you start them, don't have to be a lifetime thing. Yeah. You can graduate from therapy once you have gotten over or worked through your problem. In fact, I recommend going, if you're doing any sort of therapeutic treatment, that you go in with a goal of what you want to build up. Like mine was self-esteem and resilience. And yeah, it took a couple of years, but yeah, I graduated and I don't have to go back unless I want to work on something else. And
I completely agree.
Yeah, and anxiety, if you decide to go the medication route, which might be the way for you, there are lots of different options. Some of them, if you have like a generalized anxiety disorder like myself, I'm just going to be on anxiety medication my entire life, but that's fine. But like a lot of times though, you just go on it for like 6 months until your brain gets off of this snowballing cycle of panic and anxiety to the point where it's physically making you ill, which you mentioned in your letter. And it just kind of helps you get back on track, be able to see things a little more clearly, and then you can stop the medication. So they don't have to be these big, scary things. They can be acute treatment options that you just use as a tool to get you back to your normal self.
And the other
I
thing,
completely agree with that.
Yeah, I was going to follow up by saying, in my experience, and I've been chronically ill for a very long time now, but also, there's new medications and new treatments that come out all the time. And the type of treatments that are available now, like, might seem like a lot, but then in a year or two, it's hard to predict how those things happen. I mean, there's medication I take every 4 weeks now that's made me feel better than I have my entire life. And when I had initially become sick, and at this point, when I was in college, it was a very long time ago, like more than 20 years ago, that if I was where I was now then, I would have died. There just wasn't anything anyone could do. But now there's all kinds of medication that exists now that didn't back then. That's totally, I mean, not only kept me from dying, but makes me feel pretty good most of the time. Hopefully your life will be long, you're young, and all kinds of weird, unexpected things happen all the time. But I definitely think that treatment is reasonable and acceptable and preferable, and that doesn't mean you need to do it forever. It doesn't mean you're going to feel like this forever. In fact, treatment might make you feel not like this anymore. Yeah, I was talking to a person that I'm really close to earlier today that's having some really bad mental health struggles. And, we were just talking about how, like, I know that this sucks where you're at. I know that this is a terrible way to feel, and getting better is not going to be easy, because nothing's easy for almost anybody. But you can do it, and you need support to do it, and you have this support, which is great, and hopefully the person that wrote the letter does too. And you just gotta take your time and be patient, but get there in the way that you can get there.
Yeah, and Kara Bagel points out that everything will feel like baby steps until you make big strides. And the thing is that starts to build on itself. You make a baby step, and then you make another baby step, and you make another baby step, and then before you know it, you've walked half a mile, and then before you know it, you've walked a mile, and it just gets easier. And if no one else got you, 3 randos on the internet got you. So we support you.
We're not randos.
I support
we're
you
specific
too.
people.
I'm very rando.
Well, Oldmin, you're one of the randos. We're 3 randos.
I am definitely one of the randos. I did want to add one more thing, and maybe this will put a cap on it. I'm not sure. But like Iz said, sometimes there's a finish line, and sometimes there's not.
Yeah.
And I feel a lot of people who get diagnosed with mental illness assume that it must be chronic. And for myself, I know I have chronic mental illnesses. I know that there are things that I'm never going to be able to change, only treat. But it is possible, and in some cases, I think people need to keep this idea open that there is a finish line, and that you might cure yourself, or you might be able to get cured by seeking treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something that you know from the outset.
Yeah. And and even the stuff where there's no finish line, the types of issues, whether they're mental health or physical health, as if there's a difference, like those things that you don't have a finish line, aren't cured, are things that you live with, and you learn to live with them. And then as you get older, you realize that almost everybody's living with something, that no one has a free pass.
Everybody's living with somebody with something. Yeah.
Not everyone's living with somebody, but everyone's living with something. Sure. Everyone has a struggle, and your struggle is yours, and my struggle is mine, and that's how it is. And sure, that sucks, but sometimes life is really great, and there's lots of beautiful and wonderful and fun and scary things to do. And on that note, we got a couple of people. That was really terrible. Segue.
It was horrible.
No, that was great. I liked it.
Thanks. Oldman, that's you gotta compliment me because you're the sidekick. So
exactly, and you look very handsome too.
Thank you. You should always be honest. I was joking. You do not have to compliment me. So we got a couple people in the chat talking about their favorite movies. And Fred Undead says that their favorite is The Witch, and I definitely think that movie's wonderful. It would be in one of my top.
That's a great movie.
Not even just as a favorite horror movie, just as one of my favorite movies of all time. That movie's wonderful, great movie. Mm-hmm. And let's see who else we got. Kira Bagel says, I really enjoyed, and then there's a little bit of what to me looks like Korean text, and it says it translates into Cinderella. I'm not familiar with a Korean horror movie called Cinderella before, but I'm already disturbed by it. Is it like, because like the original fairy tale Cinderella is pretty horrific. So I wonder if it's just that. What about you guys? What about you friends today? Easy, you got a favorite horror movie of all time?
Yes, I have several. One of the reasons that I will preface this with one of the reasons that I messaged my now spouse on the dating app we were both on was because he mentioned his love of horror movies, and he was the first person who had mentioned that they liked horror movies on there. So I messaged him, and fast forward 4 years, and we're married. So horror has been a huge part of our relationship. but we have, God, there's so many good horror movies. And my first one, just to throw on, just like to have something in the background, just because it's like, I don't know. This is another movie I don't know how to describe. It's called Terror Train. I love this movie so
Terror
much.
Train. Yes.
It is.
But how did you
I don't know that one.
It
Never heard of it.
stars Jamie Lee Curtis and David Copperfield, the
Yeah.
musician.
And I think it was her follow-up to Halloween. Wasn't it the first movie she made after Halloween?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
And it
And
is a bunch of frat kids on a train. And the murderer is on the train with them. And it's not scary at all, but it's technically a horror movie because it's a slasher. If you want my favorite actually scary movies, I'm gonna go with there's Black Christmas, the original one, not the remake. The original one, I don't remember when it was, 70s or 80s, but that is, I want to say, considered the first holiday themed horror movie. It is genuinely like terrifying.
I haven't seen that.
Just one of those like super creepy movies. It's one of the first, like, the call is coming from the inside of the house movies, but it's just it's real creepy. We watch a lot of like J horror, so like one of our favorite movies is I was telling Jeremy about this before, or was I telling Oldman about it? It was it's called Cure, by the director Kiyoshi Kurosawa. That is genuinely one of the most disturbing movies I've ever seen. And also Noroi, The Curse, if we're talking about like found footage. That sort of Jeremy, have you seen that one? You made a face.
No, I haven't, but found footage horror movies is challenging for me to get through.
Yeah, this one is extremely, this one will creep you out. This is one of the most frightening movies I've ever seen. Somebody in the chat, Embryonic Priestess, mentions Hereditary. That movie destroyed me. I
have a hot take on that movie. I liked it, and I thought it was scary, but I really didn't like the fact that at the end they had that whole monologue where they explained everything. I wish they had left it unexplained.
And all the movies that I have mentioned so far do not explain themselves at the end.
Right.
They just end.
Wait, Hereditary has a monologue at the end where they explain everything?
Yes, it does.
I remember that.
Like they talk about the demon that it is and why the demon did this. And I don't mean to spoil it for people, but yeah, like I liked Hereditary a lot, except for that last, or probably not the last scene, but one of the last scenes.
I think.
Oh, and I have to mention Exorcist. That was the first movie I think that ever really like messed me up. But then Exorcist 3 is an amazing horror movie. It has very little to do with the first. Exorcist is one of the very rare horror trilogy movies that's definitely on my list of movies to watch, and stars oh my god, why can I not think of him? He played Grima Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings and like a million.
I know that guy.
He plays Chucky's voice. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Brad Dourif. I knew. Okay, did you hear Casey from the other room screaming?
Yes,
Brad Dourif is like one of Casey's favorite people in the entire world. I knew he was just listening to me on the other side of the wall, just like screaming to himself. But yeah, has Brad Dourif in it, being absolutely terrifying. So those are my recommendations. But anything J horror is pretty much J horror, K horror. That's the way to go.
What about you, Oldman? What you got?
I was gonna say, I also have to split it into two categories of horror movie: the ones that I watched to laugh at, and the ones that I actually was scared by. And as far as the one that I was actually scared by, I'm never gonna get over the Mothman prophecies with Richard Gere.
Yeah,
and
I haven't seen
think
that in a long time.
I haven't either. But when I was a kid, that really messed me up. And I think part of the reason it messed me up was that it was like so open-ended. Like, these are interdimensional creatures that don't have to appear as a Mothman necessarily. They might appear as anything that scares you. And for years and years and years, I was scared of the Mothman, for reals. Yeah, and I probably would not be so scared of it if I watched it today, but who knows? Maybe I would.
Okay, did everybody have one of those things in their childhood that just like they saw it on TV or a movie? Like you're being scared of the Mothman prophecy for like years and years.
Yeah.
I definitely had one. Jeremy, did you have one?
Yeah, for me,
What was yours?
I wouldn't put this even in the top 10 because I don't think ultimately it's a good movie, but I saw it at the wrong time and it has messed me up for the rest of my life. Is Fire in the Sky. That movie is so intense and
I never saw that
disturbing
one.
and upsetting.
Is that the one with
Yeah.
dragons?
No.
Or
No,
am I
it's
thinking of a
aliens.
different
It's
thing?
aliens.
Okay.
And you know, Fire in the Sky is one of those movies where the beginning of the movie says that it's based on real events, and then the guy that it's supposed to be based on came out years later and said, that's not any part of the story that I told anybody. But I think I'm not trying to say it's not a legitimately scary movie, but I think it is particularly terrifying to me for a bunch of reasons, one of which was when, and I still do every once in a while, get sleep paralysis where I'm awake but I can't move. And
Ooh,
I
I got that bad.
sense of, I have a malevolent sense over my head that something is
Mhm.
in the room that wants to hurt me, and that it has me by the ankle and is pulling me off the bed. And then I normally panic and shrug and wake up and I haven't moved anywhere. But you know, in the 90s, alien abduction was everywhere. It was on X-Files. Everyone was talking about alien abduction all over the place. And I didn't know anything about sleep paralysis and thought that I was being abducted by aliens for a long time. And then I saw that movie, which is really graphic, and they do all kinds of horrible things to this guy, and he witnesses like people getting like torn apart and stuff. And I thought that was happening to me at the same time. Not for a long time, but briefly. And so it was very upsetting. I haven't seen that movie since then. I haven't read very many good reviews from like the horror community about it. So maybe it's not scary to anybody else, but it messed me up big time.
My other movie would be Reanimator. That's my top horror movie of all time. Is
I love that
Reanimator.
movie. Yeah.
That's one
that
of those
was
ones
funny,
that you can watch and laugh at. Also, if we want to add to the
Yeah.
movies to watch and laugh at, horror movies, big shout out to Jennifer's Body.
Yeah.
A+.
Yeah. I'm going to go through because we've got lots of people in the chat talking about their favorite horror movies. But, you know, Reanimator is one of those movies that I guess, like, if you have to organize it in a blockbuster, it goes in the horror section. But it's certainly more of a comedy than anything else because that movie is silly and ridiculous. Alindigo says Martyrs. I've heard of Martyrs. I've never seen it before.
No. Mm-mm.
I don't know that one.
We're not going to. Nope.
Okay.
That's one of those movies where it's like, I have never seen it. And just reading the Wikipedia page for it kind of messed me up on my own.
Well, maybe tomorrow during the day, I'll read the Wikipedia page about it.
It's one of those, I can't remember what the French film movement from the 2000s was called. And specifically like French horror filmmakers, like trying to kind of outdo one another with the absolute bleakest horror they could find.
Gross. Mike the Biggie says that their favorite horror movie is The Thing, which I agree with. We hadn't gotten to mine yet. That's my favorite horror movie.
So good.
That movie has so much subtext and it gives you so little. Quick story about how I saw that movie for the first time, and then I'll name 2 other horror movies that I really, really love. But around the same time, I think that I was being abducted by aliens. I wasn't. I don't think I was being abducted by aliens. I thought then that maybe I was. I wasn't sleeping a lot, and my parents had one of the old movie channels that probably doesn't exist anymore, like Encore or something. And back then, there wasn't like the little guide that told you what the movie was. You just turned to a channel, and something was starting, or it was halfway over, or it was at the end, or whatever. And so it was like 3:00 in the morning, and I turn on Encore, and there's a movie starting, and there's a dog running through the snow, and I'm like, I don't know what this is. I can't sleep, so I'm gonna watch it. So I, was fortunate in that I didn't even know that was a horror movie when I started watching it, and that movie doesn't take a whole lot of time, but doesn't rush into revealing itself very dramatically.
Did you get emotionally invested in that dog?
No, I never got emotionally invested in dogs until much later in life.
Oh yeah, Videodrome, any Cronenberg, definitely horror.
Yeah, I agree. Videodrome is definitely a horror movie. Another one of my top horror movies is the original The Mummy with Boris Karloff. It's like from 34 maybe. That movie is legitimately creepy and weird and beautiful. The lighting in that movie is so amazing. It's one of, maybe it's not gonna scare an audience in 2023 if we've all seen a dog explode into a tentacle monster. But I think that movie is great and complicated, and it does the thing that I think is really hard sometimes for movies to do, where the villain, the monster, the whatever, you really are scared of and kind of hate and want the bad guys to defeat for most of the movie. And then it ends in a way that really makes you kind of become empathetic and feel sorry for him at the end, which I think is a thing a lot of movies try to do, but are rarely successful. And this movie does that really well. If you want to watch an old black and white classic that probably is a little problematic by many of our standards today, but is beautiful to look at and has a really great story, highly recommend. I always have such a hard time saying this person's name. Amiga Renigma says it.
Amagara Enigma.
Amagara, thank you. Amagara is the word I was looking for. Thanks. Sorry, Amagara. Says Drag Me to Hell. I also love Drag Me to Hell. That movie, I think, is Sam Raimi's best movie, and also has so much subtext. The scene in that movie where she realizes that she's screwed and she's going to go to hell, and she is crying and eating ice cream because she was on a diet, and now she knows there's no point in doing that anymore, is amazing. That's the type of like little like real human character moments to me that make great horror movies. Fred Undead says Martyr is torture porn. Yeah, if that's your thing, then cool, that's your thing, but it's not gonna be for me. Yeah. Mike the Biggie says a lot of the Universal monster movies are great. I think the original Bela Lugosi Dracula also holds up really well. I think that movie is still legitimately creepy and eerie.
OG Frankenstein as well.
Oh yeah.
Even Nosferatu holds up. I've seen
Oh.
that fairly recently.
Have you seen Nosferatu the Vampire? Like the
is that the Werner Herzog one?
Sure is, and it's real good.
I haven't.
I've never seen that either. Oh, so I just decided next week we're doing Halloween 3. The week after that we're doing the Werner Herzog Nosferatu.
Awesome.
I will come back and talk about that. It
Okay.
has as Jonathan Harker, one of my favorite actors of all time, Bruno Ganz, who, if you've ever seen any Wim Wenders movies, was in a number of them. Wings of Desire and The American Friend being two big ones. But yeah. Oh, and he was also Hitler in that like Hitler movie that everybody makes the memes about of him and the like Downfall.
Yeah, I've been wanting to see that too, but I made an oath to take a break from Nazi-related media for a little while because it was.
But yeah, Nosferatu the Vampire is absolutely wild. I love it. It's so good. Okay. I would gladly do that again.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
This is totally unrelated, but I just wanted to say it because I thought it was funny. I saw somebody earlier asking, how can I read Rise and Fall of the Third Reich on the subway and not feel weird about it? And somebody responded, for the first half where they're rising, shake your head. And then when they're falling, you're like, yeah, I'm glad. I'm real glad.
How do you communicate that? What part of the book you're reading though? Because if you're shaking,
you
your head,
emote.
You're like, yeah.
You're halfway through. You're halfway through.
All right, that's fair. I've read that book. This isn't what we're talking about right now, but I'll just put this out there and then we can get back to talking about something cooler. I've read that book and it is aggressively homophobic in really weird and unnecessary ways. Yeah.
Weird.
Anyways, we can talk more about that later, but it's unnecessarily, it's weirdly homophobic. Kira Bagel says the other thing you can do is get a book cover. I mean, I did the Rise and Fall of the Third Reich as an audiobook. It took me probably a year and a half to get through it, but I did it. Is Videodrone a horror movie? I guess anything that what's his name does is a horror movie. Anything that
Cronenberg
does. Yeah. That's another movie I've seen once or twice. I can't ever see again. Is The Fly. That movie's too upsetting for me.
Oh my gosh! But I mean, I love The Fly. You're talking the '80s Fly, right?
Yeah, yeah. Although if you ever see the one with Vincent Price, the OG, is pretty.
No.
That's the movie that you can laugh at. It's pretty ridiculous. Just because it's just the guy with a big fly mat head on top of his head.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good. Cool. Well, why don't we? Fred Undead. I know Fred Undead saw the most recent Cronenberg movie, Crimes of the Future. Fred Undead's a good filter for me because there's some types of horror I can't handle. And so sometimes if there's a movie we're not sure if I can handle or not, she watches it on her own and then usually tells me I can't handle
Fred
it.
Undead and I were also huge fans of Titan, I guess it came out 2021, the French horror movie.
Yeah, that's like where the woman gets pregnant from a car, right?
Yeah, it's very complicated kind of premise, but she is impregnated by a car. It's very big in body horror. There's slasher elements. It was just, that movie floored me on many, many levels.
Yeah.
So
I'm not going to do that.
But,
it's like,
if I met Lightning McQueen at a bar, though, I might let him impregnate me.
I mean, ka-chow, am I right?
Exactly.
He's so charismatic. That was good, Oldman. I like that joke. What was I gonna say? From what I've heard about Titan, or however you pronounce that movie,
Titan.
It reminds me a lot of Tetsuo the Iron Man. Speaking of horror movies I'll never be able to see again. You ever see that movie before? Either of you?
I own it. Well, Casey owns it and the whole like box set situation, but I have not seen it. No.
Yeah,
but then that makes me think of Akira, which was a whole nother horror situation, which is just
that's true. I saw Tetsuo the Iron Man in an art class in college, and it was one of those other movies that just kind of made me feel off and distracted and weird and kind of bummed for a little too long afterwards, I think. We're getting lots of good requests. This is a great show for people that want to get into horror and haven't seen very much. We've got so much variety.
Yeah, and if anybody wants recommendations, if you got horror movies that you like and you want more like them.
That counts as an advice question. Let's do one last advice question for the day. This one's a little bit, the other ones we've done, the solutions have been, to us at least, pretty straightforward. This one's a little more complicated. My house only has 3 bedrooms. For some people, that's a lot of bedrooms. Let's not say only.
One more than I have.
Yeah, I know. One is my office. I work remotely. My sister just got out of an abusive relationship and moved in with me. She shares the guest room with her 12-year-old daughter, while her 20-year-old daughter sleeps in the upstairs den where my office is. I have never seen a more slovenly or selfish person in my life. My niece doesn't work or go to school. The den is a disaster, clothes everywhere, trash left on the floor, dirty dishes left behind. Getting my niece to clean up her act is like pulling teeth. She will get around, their quotes, to it. Every day, I go up the stairs to start my work day, and it's a constant fight. My niece refuses to listen, will curse me under her breath, and go lock herself in her mother's room. My sister throws her hands up in the air and says she can't force her daughter to do anything, and it isn't like we can throw her out on the streets. I am this close to doing just that. I don't want to, but there is no earthly reason, letter writer says that twice, why a grown adult can't clean up their mess or contribute to the household.
Mike the Biggie says in the chat that sounds like depression, and I am going to concur with that.
Yeah. And when this person says no earthly reason why a grown adult can't clean up their mess, there's a lot of earthly reasons for that. This person just had to become essentially homeless with their mom and their 12-year-old sister because of an abusive relationship. That seems like a pretty good reason to kind of spiral out of control. And this would ultimately is an annoying and a nuisance, but a harmless way. And I think there's a lot of space between doing nothing and kicking this person out on the street. I think there's a lot of room in there for empathy and patience and compassion for a young person that's just been through something pretty horrible.
Yeah, and there, like you said, there's a lot of room for compassion. There's a lot of room for showing them some grace. Maybe it is a compromise where you give them a bin and
Yeah.
leave it in the room and say, if you could just put the dishes and stuff in here, at least get them in one place. That might be how you have to tackle it.
Yeah.
Like, it's sometimes depression does really fucked up things to your mind, and I can speak from years and years of experience of that, of you just lose all executive dysfunction. And especially, and also the thing that about this that I don't think is getting enough consideration is she is the only person in the entire household who doesn't have their own space.
Yeah.
The guest bedroom is specifically for the mom and the younger sister. This is aunt's house. She doesn't have a bedroom or a private space that she doesn't have to vacate for 8 hours a day or whatever. So is there a little bit of territorial stuff happening? Probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, I figure out a compromise that works for you guys. This is, I know it's frustrating, but yeah, you don't need to be kicking them out on the street because your place is a mess. I think there needs to be some self-examination happening as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I
Jeremy?
feel like it's very easy to lose perspective in a situation like this when you're in close proximity to somebody
Yeah.
who is already your family. They've already been through something awful, and it sounds like this person is latched on to. This is total, this is total speculation, but this person is latched on to like the domestic things that are bothering them instead of examining the whole situation, because the whole situation is so hard to look at.
Yeah. And and it's hard to lose your personal space. It seems like the person writing the letter lives by themselves. They probably had a lot of privacy and a lot of freedom and a lot
Yeah.
of space that they don't have anymore. Uh, doing the right thing is almost never the easy thing to do. My dad always says, that you're doing the right thing when it's hard, because the easy thing is usually that's why people do the wrong thing so often, is because it's easier. So this must be really difficult for you, letter writer, to be in this situation where you've given up so much, and I think having the type of space to have empathy for this 20-year-old person whose life has been upended in such, and like how was this abusive relationship to this 20-year-old's mother? Was she a victim of this abuse too? Do you know the answer to that question? Maybe not maybe, there's certainly more going on here than just a lazy 20-year-old that doesn't want to have a job and doesn't want to go to school and doesn't want to clean up after themselves.
It's really hard to apply for jobs and do all that stuff without having a permanent address.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they've got a lot of struggles on their side. And yeah, there's a lot of room for grace on both sides, where yes, the kid is going through a hard time, but they do still need to respect the person that's opening their homes to them. But the person that is opening their home to them also needs to respect the fact that the other person is going through something that is their entire life is crashing down around them.
Yeah.
So
Mike the Biggie has a good point. Mike says that maybe they can help them find therapy in some way, and that it's probably really frustrating, but you need to focus on helping each other. I mean, I think that everybody benefits from therapy at different stages in their life, and this person in this case certainly would. The trick with all of that is there's never a better way to get someone not to go to therapy than to bring up, you should go to therapy, or let me help you find a therapist, before someone's ready to commit to it. So, it already seems like the relationship between the letter writer and her niece is strained, to say the least. But it sucks. The person to be angry at is the abusive monster that put everybody in this situation to begin with, and not this 20-year-old person who, is just starting out in life and has everything collapse around them.
Just show kindness.
Yeah.
That's all.
And keep things in perspective.
Yes.
It's hard. It's so hard to do that, but looking at the big picture is so important.
I agree. And doing the right thing, you're doing the right thing when it's hard. And this seems like it's a very difficult thing to do.
Also consider investing in a room divider and just saying, hey, you got to keep all your stuff on the other side of this folding screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You do the I Love Lucy thing. You paint the middle of the room. Or
exactly.
You get the tape.
That's
all you got to do.
Was that the Brady Bunch?
That was I think I Love Lucy had an episode of that, but I think also the Brady Bunch and also most of my childhood.
Yeah, I was gonna say. And then I think
that 70s show had one.
Yeah, and I think that's a very common trope in sitcoms. They probably did it on The Odd Couple. I can't say that for sure, but I'm pretty sure they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Cool. Well, that does us for questions for tonight. I think we had a good conversation. This is how my therapist ends every appointment. How do we feel about today's session? We feeling okay? How do we feel about it?
I generally answered that I got my copay's worth. So
yeah. Can I say one thing though? Is how you like to be? Okay.
Yeah.
You are giving like high level Princess Leia vibes with your outfit right now, with the earphones and like
in my Nancy shirt.
Yeah, well, I didn't see the Nancy shirt, but yeah, it almost looked like the white gown that she wears. Yeah, like without the Nancy thing. You see what I mean? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
yes.
A little bit.
It wasn't just me.
I'm famously not a Star Wars fan. They didn't give Chewbacca a medal at the end of Star Wars. You ever think about that? He didn't get a medal.
Did he want one?
I don't know. I just think if he was there, he did as much as anybody else did, and he didn't get a medal.
Maybe it's like when baseball teams and stuff win the World Series and they get invited to the White House and they're like, no.
Maybe, but he was there. He walked up the stairs with everybody else.
Maybe he was wearing it and was under his fur.
But you see,
yeah, I was gonna say it's hard to pin something on Chewbacca. It's harder to pin it on somebody who's wearing clothes.
It's a necklace, and you see her put it on Luke and what's his name, on Han, and Chewie's just like, no.
Maybe Wookiees just don't see the point.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't like Star Wars, and I don't like it even more after I read that he doesn't get a medal at the end.
Wait, so you've never even seen it?
No, I've seen it. I just didn't pay enough attention to remember that he didn't get a medal. As a generally tall, hairy person, I just find it offensive, I guess. Okay, I think that does us. Mike says Chewie gets one in one of the shitty sequel movies.
Justice after decades.
Right, sure. Cool. I've seen all of those, unfortunately, and like some of the TV shows are okay. I like one of them.
Andor?
Yeah, Andor was good. Thank you. Cool. I think that does us for tonight. This has been super fun. We talked about horror movies. We answered a few questions from real life people. I'll wrap up by saying this has been the Advice Stream. I'm your host, Jeremy International. I'm joined as recently always by Oldmin, and our special guest for this evening was Ease. And I think we had a good time. I had a good time, at least. I hope you did too.
Yes.
Yeah, I hope Ease can come back later for the other movie that we mentioned.
I will.
Which one was it again?
The Werner Herzog Nosferatu.
The Werner Herzog. Yeah,
oh man, that's a good vocal warm-up. Werner Herzog Nosferatu. That's got almost every syllable you ever need in there. I'm going to start doing that before the next stream. But we will be back on all of the places we were today, Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you'd like to seek advice from the panel on that show, you should go to JeremyInternational.com and use the contact form. Otherwise, everyone, thank you so much, and have a good night.
So great to see all of you.